What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to All Sports Talk with Peter Burtnett, bringing you a college football episode today, and going to be really focusing exclusively on answering the question, what does the Coach Prime effect really mean for Colorado, and maybe even taking a bigger picture, what does it mean for college football? Obviously, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, an incredible Hall of Fame NFL career, and also had a heck of a baseball career as well. But he's gone potentially even more notable by his career as a coach now, as Coach Prime time as a player, and now Coach Prime. He took over the job at Jackson State in 2020, and to start with, he had to navigate all that came with 2020. The Tigers played just 7 games. They finished 7-3, and that was already, in terms of winning percentage, a huge step from the previous seasons that they had. They hadn't won 5 games since 2013, Jackson State. They went 23-54 over a 6-year period from 2014 through 2019. And so took over a program that was really in the doldrums, struggling to get any sort of wins put together. And Coach Prime pulled that team together through all that was happening in 2020. I'm not going to say the word so I can save the YouTube algorithm a little bit here. But we know what was going on in 2020 with all the challenges that all that was going on brought for college programs, for coaches, and for everybody, really. But he was able to navigate Jackson State through those challenges. Then in 2021, took a huge step forward to 11-2 regular season, or 11-2 record, and took another step further by finishing 12-1 this past season. He also was able to navigate the Jackson water crisis that left many of his players struggling to get clean water, or to have comfortable living situations, and so he kind of took the lead, really, I think, not only for his players, but also in the city of Jackson, Mississippi as a whole. And so he's proven, he hasn't just taken over. It's not like he's taken over at like Alabama, taken over for Nick Saban, or gone to some, like a Ryan Day taking over at Ohio State. He hasn't gone into an ideal situation at Jackson State. And of course, part of it, and it's really a credit to him for the reputation that he's built up. Part of it is the benefit of being such a brand name, but able to draw in the best players like a Travis Hunter, who I'll get into in a little bit. But Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, really showed that he can win and he can turn around a program as a coach. And boy, he will have his hands full with 1-11 Colorado. And so I think the first point I want to talk about is just the challenge that Coach Prime has in Boulder, Colorado, taking over the Buffaloes program, a team that went 1-11, really didn't look at all like a good football team. They do have a couple players that I do want to name as a few big returners. They've got a couple of good wide receivers, Jordan Tyson, Montana Lamonius Craig, running back Anthony Hankerson, and offensive line, they got Jake Wiley, Van Wells, and defensively, Simeon Harris. In the defensive backfield, the defensive backs, which obviously the position that Deion Sanders played, that is going to be one of their strengths, and he's shown that already with how he's helped develop Travis Hunter and others at the cornerback position. And so a couple of those guys are Trevor Woods, the safety, and then Jeremy Mack Jr., who is also a defensive back. And so those are, a couple of the players that'll stand out and that I think, from doing a little bit of looking around online and everything, that would be expected to be able to, assuming they stay, those guys that I named would be able to take a jump for Colorado with Coach Prime coming in. But the biggest thing, and it's how college football is now in general, is who they have coming in the transfer portal. They have 23 transfers coming in. They're ranked number 4 on 24/7's class rankings for transfers specifically. Their recruiting class, I believe, is number 19 right now in the recruiting class only ranking, so high school seniors. But a really strong incoming transfer class, and obviously that's led by the guy I've already named, Travis Hunter, the two-way wide receiver and cornerback who really developed in 1 year into a great football player. A couple things from watching his highlights. Obviously, in that position, you got to have some good hands, and for him, it's not only to catch the ball, which is important for a DB, of course, as well, but not as important as exclusively catching the ball. But what a DB needs to do good with their hands is be able to get in, break up passes without committing a penalty. And Travis Hunter, in his 8 games for the Tigers last year, did an excellent job of that. Obviously, another big part of it is his awareness. And again, that applies to both sides of the ball as well, being aware of what routes to run, maybe what minor adjustments to make to the route, how to play off of a defensive back, what sort of move to make at the line or in the route to get past or get open. And then same thing defensively, being aware of where the wide receiver is, where the throw is, and where the ball is coming out. And he did that phenomenally well for Jackson State. And then he's not a big guy. I think he's under definitely under 180. I think right around 6'1". So he's not huge for a wide receiver or defensive back, but he does have strength. From watching over some of his highlights, he had a lot of broken tackles. Obviously, he has the agility that you need to be playing that position, and could be, with continued development being now with the resources that a Power 5 program has and the continued coaching of the legend himself, Deion Sanders, I think Travis Hunter could have an even better sophomore season ahead of him. And, I'm not the only one saying that right now, but I think he's definitely a player, not just in college football, but future in the NFL to be keeping an eye on. And it'll really be interesting to see if he does lock in on either one of those positions. That'll definitely be something to watch potentially even this year. But then the other big player coming from Jackson State is Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders' son, the quarterback. He had a 70% completion percentage, which is really efficient, 3,752 yards, 40 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. He also added 174 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. He has a strong arm with excellent placement. Again, from watching over some of his highlights, he's able to throw 30, 40 yards down the field with relative ease and be able to drop it into a bucket. He really already kind of looks a little bit like an NFL-ready arm. Obviously, continued development for him as well. That can only get better as he not only grows more mature and older, but will be strengthened by the facilities, by the access, by the competition even, and obviously by the continued coaching of not only his dad as the head coach, but the rest of the Colorado coaching staff. Then some other players that Colorado has as a part of this number 4 transfer class. Taylor Upshaw, a defensive end from Michigan, 10.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks over his career. Levanta Bentley, linebacker from Clemson, 73 tackles, total tackles, 11.5 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a couple of forced fumbles as well. Played 217 defensive snaps in 40 games for the Tigers, so really has a lot of experience at the linebacker position in a really good defense typically as well at Clemson. Really good system that they had there. Obviously would have spent a couple of years under Brent Venables as his head coach, as his defensive coordinator. At wide receiver, Jimmy Horn coming in from South Florida. South Florida didn't exactly have a great season, but Jimmy Horn was a great wide receiver for the Bulls. 67 receptions for 959 yards, 4 touchdowns, also added over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. Those are actually, I think, numbers over 2 seasons for Horn at USF. This past season, though, he had a big game against East Carolina. Again, it ended up being a loss because, simply put, South Florida was not very good this year. But 8 receptions for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Pirates. And now moving back quickly to the defense with the linebacker, Jordan Dominic from Arkansas. He also was originally at Georgia Tech for 3 years. Really only majority played for 2 of those seasons. But his numbers from both of those programs, 137 total tackles, 16.5 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles. So some pretty good numbers for the linebacker. And he's joined by a teammate, Miles Slusher from Arkansas, defensive back, 93 total tackles, 5 pass deflections, 2.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions over 3 years with the Razorbacks. And both of those guys, Arkansas certainly had their ups and downs on the defensive side of the ball, but both of those guys have experience against both SEC offenses, and potentially even more so have the experience of being part of an SEC defense. Although, SEC has certainly shifted more towards the offense recently, but they do still have they do still put together some pretty good defenses down there. So those are a few more on the defensive end. One other DB, Kendrick Breedlove, the Ole Miss cornerback. He only recorded 1 tackle during his time there, but he was, depending on the site that you looked at, a 3 or a 4-star recruit. So he will also be a big addition, and I think can only get more experience and get better from being under a cornerback, defensive back legend. And then finally, in the backfield, Cavassier Smoke, running back from Kentucky, played 46 games for the Wildcats, 292 carries for 1,583 yards. Was a big part of the Kentucky backfield and will certainly be a big addition for Colorado. So we've gone over the roster, gone over the transfers, gone over a couple of guys that are already there. Finally, just a couple of recruits, and not being too tuned into the guys that are 3 stars. I'm going to stick with the 5 and 4 stars. They've got another DB cornerback, Cormani McClain, 5-star out of Florida. And then their 4 stars are, all 3 of them are actually on offense. Running back Dylan Edwards, and the wide receivers Omarion Miller and Adam Hopkins. The recruiting class for Colorado is number 19 in the country. And if Deion Sanders' development with Travis Hunter is any indication, those guys, any one of those 3 guys or any one of these transfers coming in could quickly develop into a standout football player. And so diving in more into this Colorado team, obviously they have a long way to go after the record they had last year. 1-11, weren't really competitive in much of the games that they played in at all, but still I think massive opportunity for growth. The Pac-12 is still pretty wide open. I think USC is going to be taking continued steps forward before they head out, which really, if Lincoln Riley stays there and they play like they did this year and even get better, that could be a big positive for Coach Prime. But he's already put together a pretty good coaching staff. I think Sean Lewis is a name that stands out to me. He's the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He's done a really good job in his coaching career. This Colorado team, again, massive room for growth. A fellow Pac-12 team, the Arizona Wildcats, jumped from 1-11 to 5 wins this past season. So it's certainly a jump that's possible. I think the Coach Prime effect could produce an even better jump. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that it's possible they could have a Tulane-type jump. The Green Wave jumped from 2 wins all the way to 12 wins this year. I think that is, especially in the Pac-12, again, it's still pretty wide open. You're going to have tough games against USC, Oregon, Utah, Washington is taking steps forward, and so has Oregon State. So it's certainly not a weak conference. I think it's more a conference that's very well balanced, but it might not. USC is the team that could take this step. It doesn't really have a dominant team. And going kind of a little bit against that point, you got Utah winning the last 2 Pac-12 championships, but at the same time, it's an even conference that is really ripe for somebody to take hold of. And I think over the next couple of years, you got Dan Lanning at Oregon, you've got Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, you've got Kalen DeBoyer at Washington, but I really think moving forward in this Pac-12 in the near future, it's going to be they're going to be fighting with Oregon and USC. And then when that door opens, when USC heads out, and who knows if Colorado joins the Big 12 again, or maybe they also join the Big 10. But there could be a period of a couple years where Colorado can really dominate the Pac-12 conference. And so it's certainly something to keep an eye on. I am certainly really excited to see where this Buffaloes program can go, because they've been down for a while, and a couple of my favorite guys in the college football analysis world, Chris Fowler and Joel Klatt, are both Colorado graduates, so I'm sure they're both really looking forward to this. And I think all college football fans should be, because it's not a traditional power. It's not like he's going to an Alabama or an Ohio State or a Georgia now, or even a Michigan or something like that. He's going to Colorado, and there is so much room for this team to make strides this year. And I'm really most of all excited to watch how Travis Hunter continues to develop and see what levels he can reach, because looking over his highlights, hearing some of the hype around him and seeing some of it play out, he is a player that could reach or even surpass Coach Prime's legendary Hall of Fame NFL career. But that's it for this episode of All Sports Talk with Peter Burtnett. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date. Also, click that bell icon to get notifications whenever I post a video. Been putting together some shorts and stuff recently as well, and really diving into a bunch of different sports. The college football episodes, especially the last one, tend to do the best. But I'm so excited to continue going along with this. And again, thanks so much for watching. If you've watched all the way to this point in the video, I'm Peter, signing out. Peace.